Hello, hello. All right, people are coming in. I'm gonna get started just in essence of time. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Danielle Angelari. I'm the executive director of NAMI Northern Illinois, which is an affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And for those of you who aren't familiar, we serve our community through support, education, advocacy, and offering hope to those impacted by mental illness. Just a few updates on my end. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. We do have a trivia night fundraiser at Park Lanes in Loves Park at the end of the month on Leap Day. Only happens once a year or once every 4 years, right? So come down and have some fun with us there. And our next Leading the Conversation webinar will be March 7th at noon, covering borderline personality disorder and dialectical behavioral therapy with Donna Addison of Stepping Stones Counseling Center and a guest speaker, Tracy Minor, who happens to be a NAMI Northern Illinois volunteer. But on to our presentation today. I have with me Jay Gangio. Gosh, I knew I was going to do it.
That's all right, Cangialosi.
Cangialosi, um, of Relief Mental Health. Jay is here to talk to us on the topic of family discord and feelings of estrangement. I do want to mention if you have questions, the Q&A feature is enabled and we'll facilitate those at the end of the presentation, please. And if you're looking for continuing education for social work, counseling, marriage and family therapy, psychology, or nursing, I will follow up after this with an email evaluation and you'll just have to return that to me. But I will turn it over to Jay. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you for inviting me to speak with you guys today. And for the rest of you, I am so glad that you have chosen to share your lunch hour with me. And of course, feel free to eat. I know a lot of you, this is your lunch hour for real. So, as Danielle said, my name is Jay Cangialosi, and I'm actually the clinical development coordinator with Relief Mental Health. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. I do maintain a caseload of therapy clients, and alongside with that, Relief allows me to take on these wonderful projects, providing presentations, podcasts, media opportunities, things of that nature. So, again, Danielle, thank you so much for inviting me here. A little bit about Relief. Um, for those of you who are not aware, did I go too fast? Let me see. Here. We are a outpatient provider of TMS services, transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is to provide treatment for treatment-resistant depression, OCD, anxiety, things of that nature. And then we also do offer Spravato S-ketamine, as well as in a few of our locations, we do IV ketamine as well has been approved. So that's really exciting. And then certainly we do also med management and then, like I said, therapy as well. So it's a little bit about us. Um, yeah, so really quickly, I do want to touch a little bit on what Danielle said, that with this being the virtual format, not necessarily going to be able to interact a whole lot with you guys throughout the presentation. So feel free, shoot your questions into the chat, that's fine. But don't be discouraged because I am going to come back and we'll do a question and answer and discussion at the end. I'm going to leave hopefully about 15 minutes for that. Um, and we do have quite a topic on our hands today, right? Because with, in light of these unprecedented times, it is a topic that does continue to prove necessary for us to discuss, right? Mainly because of all the changes that we're seeing throughout the last few years, well, almost four nowadays. It really has led to an increased need to adjust quickly to our new normal. Family dynamics have experienced major shifts as well, bringing on an urgent call for our resilience, for our understanding, and strategies really to maintain harmony within our relationships, right? Difference of opinions within our family units on subjects like politics, religion, COVID safety protocols, things of this nature have really become increasingly prevalent over the years. These differences are sparking tensions, unfortunately, within families that a lot of these families haven't ever experienced before. And now, as a result, we clinicians are seeing a surge in clients that are expressing feelings of estrangement from their own families of origin, finding ourselves, right, in higher demand to support our clients in order to navigate through the emotional impact of these conflicts. So today, our objective is to dive into several tools that you're going to be able to use with your clients to help them uh, to process these difficulties, as effectively as possible. Okay. Many things are contributing to the changes that we are seeing in family dynamics since really, like I said, the onset of the COVID pandemic. These changes include mental health concerns on the rise, such as anxiety and depression, drug use, domestic violence, and political tensions, really, to name just a few. With differing opinions on these topics, come really an increase with the division within families. And one commonality that we're seeing even more so now is really the level of passion that people have for expressing their views on these topics, right? It used to be a faux pas to talk about a lot of these things. And now not only are people talking about them more and more, but talking about them, again, with bigger passion these days. Right? So this increased strain comes from family dysfunction, which is characterized by the Chicago School as a household with high conflict and broken communication or support systems. Therefore, we're seeing this black sheep phenomenon. Matter of fact, many family members themselves have labeled, again, themselves as the black sheep of the family. I'm seeing this a lot more in my office these days, where clients will come in and say, "Oh, I'm the black sheep of the family." So what is it? What does that mean? Well, Grammarist.com defines black sheep as a term that really came from a time when sheep farmers only wanted to breed white wooled sheep because, well, for obvious reasons, it could be dyed any color and therefore it was more easily sold, making a profit, right? That gray, black colored wool was more rare, but it was less desired because it, as one can note, that it was not as easy to dye and therefore it wasn't sold very well, right? And then over time, that phrase black sheep was applied to people who were seen as different from others within their group and within their family units. And then usually this concept began to be applied to those who made poor choices that ultimately led to less success than their other family members. And therefore, there comes the negative connotation that goes with that phrase. Right. And so now, even if the person hadn't made a bad choice, but perceived that their family members thought this of them, this individual would then self identify as the black sheep. Bottom line here is this, that the mere perception of being a black sheep feels like a rejection in and of itself, which then turns to damaging self esteem and negatively impacting mood. I myself actually had a client at one point who was expressing feelings of low self esteem, depression, and anxiety, all because She knew she wanted to take on a different career path from the rest of her family. And she wound up spending most of her time in her head worried that she would either be judged or rejected by her family members, or that she would be a disappointment to them. So it really hit her hard. So this phenomenon will often lead to family estrangement over time. Okay, this separation typically occurs as a result of a difference in opinion or due to an ongoing unhealthy relationship. While I was doing my research for this presentation, I actually read an article by Pamela Lee. It was called Family Estrangement, the Three Most Common Causes and How to Handle, where she states that personality differences, negative behaviors, and external influences are the main causes of familial estrangement. Personality differences, she stated, tend to occur because of a result of mental illness or personality disorders, feelings of judgment, or differences in personal values. Negative behaviors that lead to estrangement usually include rigid, controlling, or abusive behaviors, family rivalry, substance use, and lying. And then she stated that external influences can be anything ranging from physical distance between family members all the way to an objectionable relationship, like not getting along with your step parent or the spouse of an adult child. But recently, we've seen an additional contributor to estranged relationships, and that's of generational differences, right? So, millennials, those folks aged between 27 and 42 years old, and then Gen Z, those aged between 11 and 22, they're actually being accused by older generations of having, too thin of skin, which is bringing them to making higher demands. But really, it's these younger generations that see themselves as the cycle breakers in an effort to create and maintain healthy relationships, therefore, setting boundaries that we're seeing more and more of these days. We're going to get into that a little bit later. So, what are the ramifications of this phenomenon? Right? So, whether or not the adult child has chosen the estrangement themselves, the negative impact of this phenomenon can actually be pretty far reaching because it results in strong feelings of rejection and a decrease in self esteem, right? The choice to distance from families of origin actually comes from this need to protect well being and mental health from relationships that become toxic, right? And then when we're considering societal norms, right, there's this expectation that families remain intact no matter what happens. And therefore, when the adult child decides to do what is best for them and branch off and separate from the family, they have this tendency to equate that to being flawed or broken. Intense feelings of guilt and shame will become triggers to what could be a long lasting depression. So, we're going to go through each of these ramifications one at a time. So, rejection. What do clients need to know when it comes to feeling rejected? And I actually really like this quote that I found. Rejection doesn't mean you aren't good enough. It means the other person failed to notice what you have to offer. This is the bread and butter of what we as clinicians want to make sure our clients are seeing when they are feeling rejected. Okay. Whatever the reason, it's important to emphasize to our clients they um, that they know that rejection does not define who they are. Okay. See, the human brain works, and I know you guys all know this, the human brain works really hard at creating meaning and connection about everything that happens in our lives. And unfortunately, those meanings are oftentimes negatively skewed. So I was rejected, therefore I must be bad. So, as part of the therapeutic process, clinicians should be working with clients to know that they themselves are the only ones who have the right to define who they are as individuals, not our family members, no one, right? So, work with clients to help them identify their personal values. Personal values are what shape who we are. They give us a healthy sense of self and meaning in the world. And it's really helpful in light of rejections that clients may have faced to know these, right? So, despite feeling rejected, I am still valuable. Okay. So here I'm going to go through an exercise that you can actually take and use in your sessions with your clients to help them identify their own personal values. If we were in person, I'd be handing out worksheets and everything right now, but so you can use this exercise. In full disclosure, and I'll give you guys all this information at the end as well, I did develop this exercise with help of using a website called therapistaid.com. For those of you who don't know, it's a fantastic resource for all things therapy. So we'll get into this. So the first part of the exercise you're going to want to do is to explain to your client the benefits of knowing and understanding what their values are, right? Values are what allow us to know what's important to us. So encourage your client, whoever it is you're working with on this, to reflect on what they come to realize during this exercise as what they come to realize and why a particular value happens to be important to them. Right? I located a ton of tools online to assist with identifying personal values. And I, kind of worked through them all, took all the quizzes, things of that nature. And I noticed that some of them had longer lists than others, but I also noticed a trend. And so after reviewing each of these myself, I did compile and kind of condense a list of what I thought were the more prevalent and applicable values. And I've come up with a definition for each of them. So on the slide here, you see the 7. So as part of your exercise with your client, you're going to explain the importance, but then next you're going to go over each of these values with them so that they know what really they truly mean. Okay. So autonomy, right? This is a value for those of you who prefer to be trusted to your own devices. For example, I thrive when I'm able to make my own decisions and go with them. So independence is my favorite. I hold the value of community if I'm often extending my hand to help others, if I volunteer or I exude kindness and compassion toward others, even strangers. So, nice is my favorite. Um, Ambition is a value of mine if I'm continually striving for success in my career, if I tend to, enjoy the finer things in life, even if I'm highly competitive, right? So being the best is my favorite. Um, Happiness is a value. I value happiness when I'm easily able to recognize the positives of life. So if I enjoy laughter and adventure, if I'm fun loving, so smiling is my favorite. So if you know the movie reference that I just said, smiling's my favorite, then you're my favorite, right? So you can even throw that in the chat if you want to guess the movie. I might value stability if sudden changes. Oh, I just saw the chat pop up a little bit. I value stability if sudden changes might spike my anxiety, if I struggle with change, or if I like to be around the same people and maintain routines, or if I tend to need to know what's coming up next and what to expect. So with stability, then dependability would be my favorite. I might value culture if I'm often curious about my family history and family origin, if I hold background in high regard. Tradition is my favorite. And then finally, the 7th one here is conservation. So you hold the value of conservation if you're highly aware of your carbon footprint or if you're concerned with environmental issues. So like, saving the planet being your favorite, right? So go through all of these and kind of go through those definitions with people. Once your client understands these values and their definitions, next you're going to actually go through and ask a handful of questions. Okay, now the questions, and I'm going to give you this resource at the end, the direct link. These questions came from therapyaid.com. Okay, they're called values discussion cards. Okay, so let your client know you're going to go through a series of questions. You're going to encourage them to, give you obviously more than a few, few word answers. You want actually a few sentences for their answers, long enough that you can gain a good sense of the theme in their answers. Okay, and obviously you're going to listen for that theme. Okay, and you're going to kind of keep track of what's coming up. So, for example, you might ask one of your clients, name a person, real or fictional, that you respect or admire. Okay, what traits of theirs do you appreciate? So now if your client responds by saying, well, I really admire my boss. The way she built the business from the ground up in such a short period of time is nothing short of amazing. I can only hope that I have a fraction of that success in my career. So what are we here, right? And I'm hearing the popcorn answer, hopefully, in my head, right? You heard the answer that the client is speaking to the value of ambition, talking about success. So somehow take note of that, whether you write the word ambition down, or what I did when I did this with one of my clients was I had a list of all 7, and then I was just doing tally marks for each time I heard something pop up in their answer. So keeping note of that. Okay. Now, some other examples of some good open-ended, again, keyword open-ended questions for this exercise could be ask your client to describe their ideal day. Okay, how does this ideal day compare with any typical day, right? Or another good question is, what's your dream job and why? Right? So if they're talking about, oh, I would love to be a zookeeper at the zoo and help save the animals and take care of them and, fight extinction and this and that and the other. Well, that's conservation, right? They're speaking of conservation value. Another question that's really good here is imagine that you have come into a large sum of money and you don't have to work ever again and you get to buy anything you want. What are you going to do? That's a good one, good telling question. And then this is another one here. 3 things, or what 3 things do you find yourself thinking about most often? Right? Our daydreams are very telling about what's most important to us. Right? So making sure, again, you're asking a few questions, you're going to begin to see a pattern emerge with which themes come through. Right? You might see some values show up often and other values show up not at all, right? So making sure that you're sharing what you're noticing with your client in their answers, and then having a really good discussion around the importance of personal values and truly how no one is ever able to change our personal values for us. Okay. So this discussion can really provide your client with some great insight into the kind of people they want to share their time with, right? So we're talking about rejection. Well, I feel rejected. Well, do we want to spend our time with them? So we're looking for people who are values aligned. Another goal for this exercise is to help your client to gain a greater sense of self, which ultimately will help to boost their mood and overall self-esteem. And speaking of self-esteem, what do we need to know about this? Negative cognitions, which usually result in declining self-worth, will often occur as a result of feeling wrong simply for being different. And as clinicians, we want our clients to know that being estranged or distant from family doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. And unfortunately, for some clients, we clinicians are the only person that they may actually hear that from. So they might not really believe us initially. So you're going to want to continue to have this conversation with them, however long is necessary, in order to drive home the point that different doesn't mean bad. Okay. So here, a strengths analysis is actually a really good way to demonstrate this to a client who is struggling to believe that idea that they are still intrinsically good. Okay. Now, values and strengths do go hand in hand, as values are what's important to us, and our strengths are what we're good at. Okay. Positive psychology defines personal strengths as our built in capacities for ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And we all possess distinct character strengths that are associated with six virtues of positive psychology theory. I did include a few resources here on the slide of websites that you can look through to kind of help your clients to determine their own strengths. So I want to kind of share these with you guys. The first one is viacharacter.org or VIA character.org. This provides a survey that will rank the strengths from top to bottom based on your answers. Now, by the way, when I did do my research on this, the difference with this one is that there were a set of, I think it was 24 or 25 set strengths, and I'll go over those in a minute. That is basically, these are the strengths that we have to choose from. So VIA stands for values in action, as they define strengths as our values put into action. So that one ranks your strengths. The high five test, I actually really liked this one a lot myself. This one does provide, again, a similar survey, but this time they're going to give you your top five. So they're not going to rank all 24, but they're going to give you your top five, which I actually found this one very, very helpful. And then Gallup.com, maybe some of you have heard of the Clifton's Strengths Assessment. And I actually believe that this one is typically used by employers, professionals, but it's actually a pretty good additional tool for learning your strengths a little bit better too. Now, I do want to note, you're not necessarily going to want to assign these assessments as homework. They're not free, unfortunately. Via Character and the High Five test, you can take the tests for free and get results, but with a very limited report unless you pay more. And then Gallup.com, you can't even take the assessment without paying. So don't necessarily assign these as homework, but if you gave these to your clients, who knows, they may be intrigued enough to take the test on their own. It's up to them. Right? I think the thing that's most important to note here is that positive correlation, right, between becoming more aware of who we are and what we have to offer to the world and our levels of self-esteem and confidence. As we learn more, self-esteem goes up, right? But again, pointing out to your client that no level of family discord or estrangement can ever reduce the strengths that they bring to the table. You might be in a disagreement with family members, but you still have phenomenal character strength, right? I don't drink water, sorry. All right, so in a similar way to how we walked through defining and identifying our values, we're gonna go through and define and identify our character strengths, right? So you're gonna use a similar exercise where you're gonna support your clients in realizing what their character strengths are for the purposes of elevating their self-esteem. Okay, so here we have the six categories that positive psychology identified. Okay, so under wisdom, we have the strengths of, if you count them, I think, like I said, there's 24. We have the strengths of creativity, curiosity, open-minded, love of learning, perspective. With the pillar of courage fall the strengths of bravery, persistence, integrity, honesty, and vitality. Humanity includes love, kindness, and social intelligence. Justice will include citizenship, fairness, and leadership. Temperance will include forgiveness, humility, patience, and self control. And then finally, we have transcendence, which is an appreciation of beauty, gratitude, hope, humor, and spirituality. So, again, with asking a series of open ended questions, they must be open ended. You and your client can discover a trend with which strengths shine through. Okay. So, I gave a few questions that I feel like they do a good job of pointing us in the right direction of discovering our strengths. So the first one is maybe they already kind of have a sense. So you could ask, what qualities do you bring to your relationships, whether they be romantic relationships, friendships, or family, right? Another good question that you could ask is to find out from them, what are you typically complimented on? So what do people typically, give you kudos for, right? What qualities help you at work or school? It's a good question. What are you proud of and why? Right, so that's another good open-ended question to get that discussion going. Similar kind of question of this one is, describe a time that you did something really well. Why did it go so well? And then my favorite question, I saved the favorite for last, is what are you doing when you feel most lit up, most energized, most full, right? I love that question. People's face will light up when they answer it. So it's really good. I don't know what just happened with my slides. Give me 1 second. Okay, so as your client is answering these questions, you're going to take note of the categories of the strengths that you're hearing, again, what's shining through, and you're going to provide, with these, they're going to provide insight into your client's strengths, giving them that boost of confidence that they actually do, in fact, have a lot to offer, right? So we have addressed rejection, we've addressed self-esteem. So now let's take a look at toxic relationships. Okay. It is actually really important to ensure that clients are aware of what a toxic relationship looks like. And I'm sure some of you have seen this happen in your own sessions, right? Where people remain in relationships not actually knowing the potential risks to their mental health and well-being. So you want to go through some classic components of a toxic relationship to make sure that your clients are aware of these, right? So the first one on the list right there, gaslighting, defined as a manipulation of another person by questioning their thoughts, even oftentimes making them feel, quote, right, crazy. We typically see this as the other person kind of turning your own thoughts or worries back onto you. No, that's not how it happened, or no, I didn't say that. Those kind of phrases, examples of gaslighting. Verbal abuse, right, such as name calling, belittling, intimidation, or really any kind of demeaning words of any kind. Another component of toxic relationship would be any kind of controlling behaviors, like monitoring phone usage or controlling who can be seen outside of the family, how your time is to be spent, isolation, those kind of things. And then jealousy, another component, right? So while that typically happens within romantic relationships, we can see jealousy as a trait, for example, from parents toward their child's friends. Okay. And then you might be able to add to this list of what you also would consider, falling under a toxic relationship. When a client does express that one of their familial relationships might be toxic. You want to have an open conversation about what types of relationships your client would like to have in their life. Okay? Discuss ways that the client might be able to choose people that they'd like to surround themselves with and how to access those relationships as well. Again, this is going back to being values aligned. We're essentially claiming our chosen family over being completely isolated, which we want to avoid, of course. All right, guilt and shame, right? What do we need to know about guilt and shame? So cognitive behavioral therapy is actually a really good tool to use here as it helps to shift those negative thought patterns. So working with clients to practice being open to this new idea that despite what has gone wrong within their family units, they are not flawed humans. Okay. So they don't need to take on the feelings of guilt and shame for how things went down. I like reframing as a good example of a CBT technique to make that cognitive shift. So, with the use of reframing, your client will be able to see their family situation from a different perspective. And hopefully, it's one that they're not seeing themselves as being 100% to blame. Okay. Lots of tools out there for reframing. You can walk your clients through and raise your hand. I know a lot of us out here are using the left and right columns for left side being negative cognition, right side being positive reframe. Okay. So you might kind of do that right in session. Pull out a piece of paper, negative cognition on the left, positive reframe on the right, having your client write these down with you. Okay. So they say, my family has rejected me because I'm different from them. Okay. That's a negative cognition. How can we reframe that? Well, despite any rejection that might have occurred, I am not bad or flawed. Okay. So with this, you're going to practice reframing with your clients, right? Because when we're able to adopt new thoughts and attitudes about who we are and about our situation as a whole, we actually do find that the guilt and shame tends to fade. So just give a couple other examples there. You guys all know how to do that. And then our final ramification, depression, right? So when we're treating clients who are going through estrangement with family, it's a heavy hitting topic. It's extremely important that we're assessing and screening for depression regularly. Okay. So in order to treat for depression, we want to ensure that clients are provided with tools for identifying and maintaining self-care, allowing for themselves to actualize healing and to make sure that their happiness and well-being are priorities, that they are priorities. Okay. There's a few therapeutic approaches that can assist clients with addressing depression as a result of the estrangement. None of these are going to be new for you guys, right? ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. So we're going to work with clients to gain acceptance of their current circumstances, making sure that they understand we don't have to agree with the circumstances or the reasons for the circumstances, but they are the circumstances. So accepting that as the truth. We're not accepting those negative cognitions, right? But we're accepting that at this time, there is a strained relationship. And even though I don't have to agree with it, it helps to know that it is just the fact, right? DBT. So even though we typically use DBT with our borderline clients, we can use it here to teach clients that there is a natural reaction to life's hardships, right? So your client might be feeling upset or angry because of something that was said or done, and that can actually be okay, especially obviously if it fits, right? So if you stub your toe, you're going to say, ouch, that ouch fits, okay? So working with clients to process through any emotions that they might have and understanding that, hey, it's okay that this is difficult right now and that I feel this way. So, but what can I do about it? Okay. And then to reiterate the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because again, that's going to empower your clients to know that they actually do have control over what they think and how they behave in response to situations. Okay. All right. A little behind on time here. So, how can we bridge the gap? Okay. So, considering all these ramifications, can we possibly repair relationships? Well, one way to do that is by showing clients the importance of them being open minded as well, right? So, we oftentimes see clients wanting our family members to be open minded and hearing our points of views, but it's going to kind of be one of those things that goes both ways, right? Your clients' opinions matter a great deal, but they're also not the only opinions in the circumstance. Okay. If I want somebody to be open minded for me, I need to be willing to be open minded for them and hear what perspectives they have. Okay. So encouraging our clients to be inquisitive, to ask questions, to gain further insight from the person that they might be at odds with. Okay. Um, you guys know the difference between open-minded and closed-minded. Another way to bridge these gaps is to set realistic expectations. Okay. In situations like this with family estrangement, I hear all the time from clients, well, I just want to be in a family where where everyone agrees on all the topics. Well, that's not really realistic, right? So we can use role playing strategies to help our client to express their truth and their perspectives, but without having expectations that the other person is going to always agree with them. Okay. So the goal here is to get this conversation to be one where we're not convincing the other person, but rather we're just being able to hear each other's points of views. Okay. We want to make sure that our clients are identifying expectations that are mutually respectful and understanding of each other's needs. Okay. So, they've got to be realistic. Okay. When I work with clients on identifying expectations, I have them ask these two questions. Would I be willing to meet this expectation myself? And am I able to discuss this rationally? Okay. Go through a couple of these slides here. Healthy boundaries, right? So we want to make sure that along with expectations, it's important for our clients to feel equipped and empowered to set healthy boundaries for family members. This is our need to our need for personal well-being speaks to what's important to us. Okay, letting others know how to be in relationship with us. Okay. So just as with expectations, any identified boundaries do need to be fair and realistic. Okay, and therapists, we can actually be a really good sounding board for this, supporting our clients in identifying boundaries and again, role playing how they can be expressed. Okay, so we could do it verbally or nonverbal, right? So a verbal expression of a boundary might be, I don't feel comfortable discussing politics with you, as these conversations tend to become heated and unproductive. I would prefer that we discuss other topics instead. And if politics comes up again, I'm going to excuse myself from the conversation. Right? That's verbally saying to the other person your boundary. Nonverbal expression of a boundary is that you might tell your client to, practice excusing themselves from the room or the conversation if it ever comes to a point where the conversation is beyond their boundary, right? So practicing these now, mind you, all of these different strategies that address these ramifications could take a course of a good couple of sessions, right? And then finally, another way to potentially bridge these gaps would be to um, suggest family therapy. Okay. Obviously, you want to explain to your client the benefits of family therapy. You want to make sure that you're really well versed on your client's family situation, getting the background, making sure that's a priority because not all cases necessarily would be suitable for family therapy. And for those of you who work with families, I'm sure you know that there's a lot of different types of therapies and approaches that go with that. But typically, in a case where we have family conflict, discord, or estrangement, a therapist might use a more structured approach, because with this type of therapy, we're looking at how the family members are interacting together, and how those interactions impact each other. Families are taught how to work within the realms of healthy boundaries, healthy expectations. So that is a coaching through family structured therapy. And then, of course, obviously, communication is a key component of family therapy. Okay. So lots of different benefits and great ways that family therapy can assist with bridging these gaps as well. Yeah, really. So, I mean, as most of you might know, our clients, they're coming to us because they're seeing us as the experts. They're not wrong, right? So even in cases where we might not have experienced these same events in our own lives, we are well trained and we know how to support them through these events, right? So you trust your instincts, trust your expertise in navigating these challenges with your clients, because when we can show up for our clients this way, we actually do become a pivotal part in bridging these gaps as well. So I do see several questions. Let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can participate in the Zoom. All right, go ahead and I thought I was in gallery view. Okay, so let me pull up some of these questions here. Yes, Monica. Monica, I see you saying you love Elf. Okay, so she gets the smiling is my favorite movie quote. Very, very good. And yes, we will. I'm going to put out some copies of the slides as well. Danielle is going to get those to you. So Sue, I see your question there about the slides. Okay, and Rebecca, same question, recording about today's call. So yes, so all of those questions or logistical questions. Does anybody have any questions about our presentation here at all? Anything at all? I want to make sure. This is the first time I've used this question and answer feature on a Zoom call. So anything else? No, I'm not seeing any other questions come through. Okay, I had to fly through a few of those a little bit because I wanted to make sure I honored all of your time, and now I've got a good 13 minutes left. So, was there any slides that you wanted to see again? I can go back. For those of you who are still here, I did fly through this slide here with the realistic expectations. And because I do have more time, I wanted to come back to this one because I didn't really like the idea of skipping it. So let me share this again. This slide here with setting expectations. So I actually did formulate this formula on my own here. So this is again going back to expressing and sharing expectations, right? So with this one, the formula looks like this. Person A will make a request of person B, and then person B is going to answer that request in one of three ways. They're either going to say a definitive yes, I can work on that, or no, that's not something that I can offer or that I am willing to change. And then this third way that they can answer that request is somewhere in between. I can't exactly do what you're asking me to do, but I can do this. Okay. So with expectations, if the answer is ever anything other than yes, the person making that request, in this case, person A, they're going to need to decide whether that answer, that non-yes answer, is a deal breaker for them. And they need to decide what they're going to do in response to that answer, right? So if you're looking at, for example, setting an expectation with parent, hey, mom, spouse and I would really appreciate it if it's important to us that the baby's sleep schedule is maintained even while you're babysitting. So we really appreciate it if you were to maintain that sleep schedule. Okay. So when mom's going to answer to that, she's either going to say yes, no, or somewhere in between. And with that answer comes a decision from the requester, spouse and I, to decide whether or not that means that mom is going to be their future babysitter, right? So I usually go through this formula with my clients to make sure that they're able to communicate their expectations effectively. So again, I wanted to go back and circle back and make sure that you guys saw that slide as well, as far as setting expectations. Yeah, do we have anything else? I mean, we've still got a good 10 minutes. Any other questions that may have come up on any of the material here? Anyone? You guys can go ahead and type them in the chat. Again, I know there's no microphone where you can just pop in, but am I missing any? Danielle, am I missing any questions that are popping up that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, so you have from Kelsey, great information. Thank you. And just Joy wanted to comment that the sample questions you gave as interventions are really helpful.
Oh, good.
I do have two
Thanks,
questions
Joy.
here. How do you get clients to answer honestly about if they can be rational about a conversation?
How do we get clients if they can be to make sure that they can be honest about that? Well, first of all, I think a lot of that's going to come from rapport, but I think it's, explain the importance of it. Why is it important for you to know this about yourself, right? We're all therapists here. We all know that sometimes we're having more difficult conversations where we're going to need to challenge client. Hey, client, this isn't for me. This isn't for my improvement. This is for you improving something that you have expressed is important to you. Oh, my family is important to me. It's important to me that we are able to bridge these gaps, or it's important to me that we're able to address these concerns. It's important to me that I'm able to heal from whatever it is that's going on here, whatever the outcome is. Well, if that's important to you, then, who's it hurting that you're not being honest when you're really doing that self exploration, right? And so I'll even say it right there in a session. Hey, client, make sure you're being really, really honest with yourself when it comes to asking yourself that question. Can I be rational? Hey, maybe I can't. All right, therapist, let's talk about that together and come up with a way to get to that point before we go into that realm. Great question. I really appreciate you asking that. Did that help?
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
And then there's another, I'm not sure if it's a comment or question. When teenager is estranged from parents because of differences in beliefs and parents don't want to change or will not just want the teen to change. I'm not sure if you can see that one
Can you
in the
read? I
Q&A.
can't see it on my end here. I'm trying to scroll through. Can you read it one more time?
Yeah, it says when teenager is estranged from parents because of differences in beliefs and parents don't want to change or will not just want the teen to change.
Uh-huh. Okay. So we're it sounds like we're looking at relationships where well, kind of a couple of things. Um, teen to parent. Now we're looking at a relationship where teen is still under the household, right? Still under the roof of the parent. That's a little bit of a different dynamic. I've worked with teens before where it's like, hey teen, your opinion is valuable, your beliefs are valid, all of the above, but we're going to work with that teen to maintain a relationship, a cohesive relationship as much as possible while we're in that capacity. Okay. That's the thing about being a teen, being a child, etc. But one thing I do actually I will say to my clients and reiterate as often as I need to, you know, when we become adults and we, get out on our own, start our own lives, we're paying our own bills, we're driving our own cars, all that kind of stuff. When we get to that stage of life, the cool thing is that we get to, and I use that word, that phrase very specifically, we get to make these choices for ourselves. We get to decide, well, religion. Do I still adhere to this religion that I've been raised on? And we do our self exploration to figure that out. We get to make our own decisions on how we conduct ourselves in this world. We get to identify these different things for ourselves, right? So as teens, yeah, I'm going to admit, it is, that much more difficult to get through. But we also have to understand, and this is helpful for the teens, well, really for any age group. Like I said before, it's not about changing the other person because that's completely outside of our control. But it is about being able to have and willing to have these conversations where we can sit down and say, here's my point of view, here's my perspective, here's my feeling, what's yours? Okay. So if I want others to listen to mine, I have to be willing to listen to others and gain that further understanding. And as therapists who work with teens, I think that's a really good way of, we're building emotional intelligence with our teens. We're building emotional, what is it, EQ, right? Emotional maturity with our teens when we're coaching them to work with adults and other figures of authority in their lives in that way, to be willing to hear their perspectives as well. They don't have to agree with it, right? So hopefully that kind of gives some good insight with that.
Thank you. Two more questions.
Yeah.
How can you address when the family members want to have a relationship, but their basic values are at odds with one another?
You know, I don't think I think it's actually more likely really that we're going to find ourselves in relationships with all kinds of people who have different values than our own, and we get along swimmingly with these people. I always like to give an example of, I do have a family, well, more than one, but one in particular who, I know for a fact our values are very, very different, maybe quite opposite of each other's. But you know what else I know about this person that I'm very different in values and opinions on? What else I know about this person is, all of the reasons why I absolutely love them, all of the reasons why they are such important, very special person in my life. This particular individual. I mean, I can go on and feel all the feelings and get all the warm fuzzies about it. Because again, even though we have such a difference of opinions and values in our lives and how we believe, there is no denying all of those wonderful attributes about them as well. So when we're struggling to be in relationship with folks because they have different values than our own, I'm going to challenge you to think about it, to look at that person that way. Look at all of the things that you do love and appreciate and adore, and all the good things, because I bet you that's going to outweigh the difference of values.
Thank you. And one more. Any thoughts on how to hold space for families where a family member is missing due to ambiguous loss of a change in the family system like divorce or incarceration when that member is impacting the overall dynamic?
Okay, so if I'm understanding this question correctly, it sounds like when there is a family member who is no longer a part of the unit anymore, incarceration being one reason, or maybe even they chose to up and leave, right? So if that's my understanding, um, well, not to downplay, because that is kind of a big deal, and not to diminish that, but it's to be able to look at that person. Hey, I wish you well. I send the love and the vibes to you. No harm, right? I'm not trying to wish any kind of harm on that person, but let me focus here, right, on the folks who are intact and developing these relationships, and because there really is this understanding of, well, what's the reason why that estrangement, or that complete sever of relationships, what's the reason why that is so impactful? because I miss them, because, they used to be a part of our unit and now they're not, and they were an important part of our unit. Okay, so what makes the remaining parts of the unit important? And let's focus in on that. Kind of similarly to what I was talking about before. If I can focus in on these good things and develop here, then I don't have to run the risk of missing out on multiple relationships. Again, it's not to diminish, because we still, well, hopefully we're still, sending that cosmic love to the other person, and whatever else is going on here, and maybe they'll come back, I don't know, but there is still this happening, the present going on here too. Hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you. And
Yeah,
that's the last one I see at the
that's
moment.
it. You guys, these were really, really, really great questions. Like Danielle said, I'm going to work on reformatting my slides here so that she can get them out. Especially because, like I said, some of you might have wanted to jot down some of those questions and things. Um, and I will also, in my slides, include the specific link where those discussion questions came from on therapistaid.com. Okay.
And yeah, I just wanted to pop back in and say thank you, Jay. It was a lot of amazing information, and we all appreciate your time, and we hope you come back to join us again.
Well, I thank you for having me. And if I am invited back again, I will certainly do that. I'm just glad we were able to keep within the hour, and honor everybody's time. And so, all of you who are here, thank you so much for listening to me yammer on for an hour.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a great day. See you
You guys,
again.
thank you. All right. Bye, guys.